welcome to DCMT. I'm Eric McClanahan. With me today is Kylan Savage. How are you, Kylan?
I'm gonna make it. Once again, you still can't get rid of me. You keep trying to shake me off, and it's not gonna happen.
Uh, I just keep I just plan on you being here now. So you're
Right? Yeah, yeah. We've gotten into a groove now. So
um also joining me again is AJ Simmons, who just had a new book come out. How are you doing, AJ? And can you tell people about your book?
I'm doing quacktastic and full of anxiety that strangers are going to read this thing now. But yeah, book's called Jesus and Joe Strummer. You can get it on Amazon on July 2nd. And yeah, I don't think it's the greatest book ever, but I think there are worse ways to spend 3 or 4 hours. Like, I don't know, having like a colonoscopy or like a root canal probably are worse than reading my book. So yeah, if you got 3 or 4 hours and a couple bucks or Kindle Unlimited, have at it.
I should get Kindle Unlimited, but like literally right now, I just pre-ordered it.
There you go. Thank you.
Also have with us tonight Josh Balogh. How you doing, Josh?
I'm doing pretty good. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Glad I can make one of
thanks for
these. You
joining us.
invited me and I keep you and I'm like, I can't make it.
You run out of excuses of having to deal with Kylan and I. You're like,
I know.
I got to go wash the cow's hair. Like, you're like, I've used all of them. I guess I have to get on tonight.
Yeah.
I've tricked y'all. This is actually a Jars of Clay special.
Oh my God, get out of here.
Yes.
No, it's
Let's do this.
It's a Kylan Savage Jars of Clay intervention.
All right. We're gonna jump right into it tonight. We're doing our top 10 albums of 2011. I wanted to do 2011 because it was pretty big year for me. I don't know about everybody else, but like especially my top 3 albums were just hugely influential on the direction of my tastes over the last 13 years. Like I felt like I found the things that really kind of, musically I really appreciate, and it's kind of steered what I've been looking for over the last decade plus. So thank y'all for joining me tonight. Alan, is there any special significance for 2011 releases
okay,
to you?
so here's the funny thing is when you first brought it up, I was like, yes, I already have a list. And then I looked through my list and it was actually a list I had made for 2010. And so I had to scramble.
So you were hoping it was 2010 when you texted
when
me
I
earlier.
texted you today, I was like, wait guys, are we doing 2010? But no, I have a 2011 list because 2011 was a big year. So I think I'm a little bit younger than you guys. So 2011 was the year I turned 21, and I was fully in my pretentious barista hipster phase. And I think my list will probably reflect that a little bit. But yeah, it was a pretty big year. There was a lot of pretty great albums that came out.
I've never been more excited to hear your list than after that description.
It's gonna be something.
AJ, what about you? Any special significance to 2011 music wise?
So I think when the decades happen, like everything kind of coalesces and makes sense. You're like, yeah, it checks out for him. This is me at my most chaotic, like chaos goblin, I think, because I'm all over the place when it comes to the albums in 2011, and I will immediately disagree with my list as soon as we're done with it. I'm gonna be like, and on top of it, like there were genuinely like 25 albums that I was battling through and changing my list as of 5 minutes before I jumped on here. So I will probably change it. But I don't think I forgot anything, unlike on 2010 where I forgot Gaslight Anthem's American Slang. And I was like, that's my number one album of 2010, and my initial version of 2010 didn't even have it on it.
Wow.
So there's that. But yeah.
Well, you can edit that, and since we didn't do an episode on it,
again,
you
I
can
just
just edit
the right
it
to argue with myself.
Yeah.
Nobody disagrees and hates my take on music more than myself. So,
Josh, what about you? 2011, anything significant for you?
pretty significant year for me. I turned 30 in 2011. I moved cross country from Texas to Florida to take a job that was part-time with the potential of being full-time job in ministry. And so it was a big year with a lot of changes. And I think some of my musical picks will reflect that. Some of my favorites are there that kind of got me through the year. But yeah, it was a pretty big, significant year for me.
Okay. Josh, do you want to kick us off with your number 10?
Sure. Yeah, and as I go through my list here, my list I will say is pretty top heavy. My top five could be interchangeable at any point. I struggled a little bit with the bottom five and it bumped a few out, swapped a few in. But I'm going to go with kind of a basic pick here with my number 10s. What I ultimately decided on was Adele's 21. There's too many hit songs on there to leave it off the list for me. That's where I was first introduced to her. Love her voice. Someone Like You is just one of those sad boy songs that makes me cry that I like to listen to. And
for sure.
Rumor Has It, Turning Over Tables, those are some other favorites among the others that were, I don't know how many hit singles there were, but I think there was at least, I don't know, 4 or 5 probably.
I mean, I feel like that whole album was just all hits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's my number 10.
I guess I'll go next. My number 10 is Hearts by I Break Horses. Some dreamy synth pop, which I'm pretty into. Anybody who knows my taste know that. I think they got their break opening for M83. That was kind of how they made the name for themselves. Female fronted, has a little bit of shoegaze influence to it. They might be Swedish. Are they from Sweden?
That sounds right.
Yeah, Sweden. So, which is where I think most of the best synth pop and dream pop comes from.
Oh, for sure.
So yeah, that's my number 10. AJ, what is your number 10?
I'm going to go with Lydia's Paint It Golden. You text me the other day being like, do you remember Lydia? And I was like, I do remember. they will in fact be making an appearance.
Nice.
The first
That's awesome.
Some Arizona music showing it. But yes, I think especially during this era, like Copeland had just broke up, so I was like, I need like dreamy kind of whiny white boy music. Right. All right, thank you very much. And you're local. We're gonna go see you play at Masonic Temple. Let's do this. All right, Kylan.
Awesome. Kylan, go ahead.
Yeah. So first off, I gotta say, Josh, Adele's 21 was my number 11. I know we're not doing honorable mentions. It just barely didn't make my list. It's a great album. My number 10, surprising myself, I think more than anyone, was Torches by Foster the People. So obviously, like, Pumped Up Kicks was such a huge, massive hit. But then I bought that CD and I found that the rest of the album was just as good. I mean, Call It What You Want, Don't Stop, I Would Do Anything For You, are all great songs. It's very, like, super dancey, and I have very specific memories of driving around East Dallas in the middle of the summer, just windows down, blasting this album. It's so good. And it's where, they're one of those bands that, like, they're kind of a one-hit wonder, but I definitely recommend giving the rest of the album a listen if you haven't.
Being the somewhat contrarian that I am, I tried not to like them because all the hype around them when Pumped Up Kicks came out, but it's just such a good song.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't listen to everything else on that album, I don't think, but they had some other singles that I also enjoyed.
Yeah. Good.
All right. Let's see, Josh, what's your number 9?
My number 9 is Broken Voice by My Epic, which some would consider an EP, but as I looked at it, 8 tracks, 32 minutes, that feels long enough to qualify as an album for me. So I was able to get around my typically no EP rule that way. This album has been a big part of the bedtime routine. I listen to it a lot. When I'm looking to get into sleepy mode. Songs Beloved, Alone, and Doxology are my favorite, but the whole thing is just the vibe that I'm looking for as I'm lighting a candle, just trying to read a book, trying to get sleepy. That kind of puts me in that mood right there. So that's one of the several that I go to on a regular basis.
Very nice. Can you all hear my cat in the background?
No. But
Okay,
now I'm going to
good,
listen for it
because
specifically.
well, we just got a kitten and it wouldn't stop biting on all my cords, so I shut it in the bathroom, and it is not a fan.
So mad about it.
Yes, yes. Anyways, my number
now
9
I hear it.
is.
I can hear it now, yeah.
I literally heard it
Oh,
the
no.
second after you said that.
Is that something you can edit out, Kylan?
Yeah, for sure.
Somehow?
It'll be fine.
Okay. All right. My number 9 is With Shivering Hearts We Wait by Blindside.
Oh, yeah.
Their return after a 6-year kind of break, I guess. And I was like, oh, I've waited 6 long years to hear more music from Blindside. And now here we are with this was the last thing they released. So now we're 13 years removed from this one. And hopefully I'll feel pretty strongly about their next release as I did with this one. I was
For
just
sure.
I part of the appeal was almost just like they were one of my favorite bands, I think, and I've wanted music from them for so long. So
I get that.
but yeah, I don't think this is one of their. I don't think it's very well received. Really, they put a little bit of like a little bit of like dance influence in it and things like that. But I don't know. I dig it. AJ,
Nice.
what's your number 9?
It's a band we've talked about on here before, but I don't think any albums have actually appeared. Deus Vale's self-titled.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, really pretty music, really wonderful, like harmonizing and melodies, and nice little indie kind of pop alternative album.
That one, the production, I did not like at all when it came out. Similar to what we were talking about with Chase This Light. But I also came around to the production on that one and enjoy it quite a bit now. Kylan, what is your number 9?
My number 9, surprisingly, for the first time since I've been on this show, my first country record, because I'm weirdly like a big country guy, and it doesn't get brought up a lot. But Hell on Heels by the Pistol Annies came out in 2011. It was Miranda Lambert and a couple other people. I loved it. It felt like taking the torch from the Dixie Chicks and bringing in like a lot of bluegrass influence, a lot of really good harmonies. It's a incredibly good country record.
I've not heard
I
the
bet
whole
I
thing.
would like it, but I'm pretty surprised to hear that you like country. I did not know that about
Oh,
you.
Josh, you should see my upstairs. My vinyl collection is 100 plus 70s and 80s country records. That's like all I listen to mostly.
We're gonna have to do a
I'll have to
top
give that a
country
shot.
albums episode at some time.
Oh,
some
I'm
point.
so into it. I've been trying so hard to get the CJN guys to do a Patreon episode on country music, and they're like, "Yeah, I guess." I'm like, "No, this is literally all I ever want to talk about."
I'm sure we can make that happen at some point. Where were we? Josh, you're number 8, is that right? Is that where we were at?
Yeah, number 8. So this one would have been probably the newest to my list because I've been keeping a running list in all of the years, really. But as a newer fan of John Van Dusen in the last 5 or 6 years, I went back to his Lonely Forest, the band that he fronted before he went solo, and I really like their album Arrows in 2011, produced by Chris Walla. And there's got some really strong pop rock on there. I love the way they turns the phrase and isn't afraid to talk about spiritual things, but also isn't super reverent about it sometimes. So he's a little bit irreverent, which I enjoy. So the songs that I would highlight are Turn Off This Song and Go Outside, I Don't Want to Live There, We Sing in Time, and then the title track Arrows. But I think the whole thing is really solid pop rock. He's got kind of a really he uses vibrato, but also some tremolo in his voice, which I think is really
nice. That's cool.
Gonna stand out.
I need to check that out.
Had no clue Chris Walla was worked on his music. That's pretty cool. All right, my number 8, I do not have a visual for because they released no physical copies, which made me very sad. It's Distances by Canopy Climbers.
Oh, I don't know.
They are a very Paper Route-esque band, I would say, big on electronics, but also, they don't get too weird, too experimental, just some cool sounds here and there. And I think they're probably done for good now. They put out this album in 2011 and another one in 2013 and 2 EPs, all that are really solid. But I think the singer is now in a group that actually does pretty big Spotify numbers, despite me never having heard them on the radio or anybody ever talk about them. But I think he's doing all right with that project now. So yeah, fans of Paper Route, maybe some Mute Math and stuff might find that pretty interesting. All right, AJ, what is your number 8?
Talking about genres that don't really appear on our list very often, I've got, I think, my first hip hop album on the stuff that we're talking about. And it's The Streets. They're from England. Their album Computers and Blues. It's kind of different type of hip hop. There's like strong electronic elements to it. And like I said, it's English, like it's British, like working class British guy. So it's kind of a different type of hip hop. I in particular, you point people to Blip on a Screen. It's about like the first time he saw his kid in womb on the screen, which as dads, I think, can appreciate the emotion of that a bit. And so it's like this really cool, really vulnerable song that in particular I think folks would maybe try. They've got bigger tracks, like I think Dry Your Eyes was a pretty big one because Chris Martin from Coldplay appeared on that, but that was a few albums ago. And Fit But You Know It was on one of the FIFA games. But those are all different albums. But yeah, first hip hop album, I think. And yeah, it's a good one.
I have apparently heard their A Grand Don't Come For Free album.
Yeah, hip hop concept album.
Yeah, I did not rate it very well, but I don't remember anything about it. So maybe I need to revisit that.
They are niche and different, and fair enough if you don't.
If I remember, like it was very noticeably British rap, right? Like
100%. Oh yeah,
no mistaking.
There's no hiding it at all.
Yeah, it may have just been a little British. Yeah, it may have just been a little too outside my comfort zone, maybe.
Fair enough.
Probably only heard The Streets and Dizzy Rascal as far as British hip hop goes. So, yeah. Kylan, what is your number 8?
My number 8 is Simple Math by American rock band Manchester Orchestra. They're a really big band for me. Mean Everything to Nothing from 2009 would probably crack my top 10 albums of all time. And Simple Math was the follow-up. To me, it was really similar to Death Cab, going from Plans to Narrow Stairs, where when it first came out, I was like, I don't think I like this. And then it grew on me like a ton. And I love that record. I think it feels like a real dividing line from kind of what they were doing before to like what they're doing now. It's right before the so Josh Olson and I did an episode of our show Disco Dads about Manchester Orchestra, and we talk about the pre and post Swiss Army Man soundtrack. And that's really where they kind of like changed their direction, but you could see a little bit of that coming in this record, and I still just think it's all bangers, which is weird for me because I'm not a big mid tempo guy, and most of this record is like mid tempo. Like I either need it to be blistering fast or the slowest song you've ever heard, and this is like kind of right there in the middle. But it just hit me at the right time. It's a good record.
I wish Manchester Orchestra would kind of do more of the slow stuff. I feel like their slow songs are always really good.
Yeah.
Like I Can Feel a Hot One, and the
Well,
title track,
there's a
Simple
difference
Math,
because-
is also a pretty slow one.
Right. Well, because they've got a lot of slow stuff in their newer stuff, but they used to be like Andy used to sing. I feel like a lot more emotive. Like he used to do the kind of more like emo, like scream, yell, singing kind of thing, and he's like real soft now.
Yeah, he mellowed out.
Yeah, and this record I feel like is kind of a really good mix between those two modes.
Okay.
So I came to Manchester later, so I really like their Black Mile to the Surface and Million Masks of those two albums. And I like their other stuff too, but I gravitated more towards their latter stuff.
I was really into them like at their first few albums. I think Simple Math around there was I kind of lost interest, I guess. But I have enjoyed their later stuff. It's just not something I get an urge to listen to real often for some reason.
Right.
Even though I do find it to be really good.
I get that.
Josh, what's your number 7?
Okay, my number 7 is by Ben Shive. It's called Cymbal Crashing Clouds. Ben Shive is a big producer in Nashville for artists like Andrew Peterson, and kind of in that vein of music. He's kind of most of Andrew Peterson's music, but known more for his producing than his own work. But he does have 2 solo albums, and this one is very piano pop, but he's telling stories, and it's very clever lyrically, so it's something that appealed to me. He got a song called Every Good Boy Does Fine, which I think is really clever.
Oh, and yeah, that's nice.
He has another one called Listen, which he just is able to really mock the sound of a train. So it's almost like little mini parables, like 10 or 11 mini parables across the album. So I just found that kind of a fun little quirky listen.
That's awesome.
I'm familiar with his name, but I've not listened to a whole lot of his music, I don't think. My number 7, I did not have a rule of keeping EPs out, so Evening by May is my number 7.
Nice.
When I first kind of started trying to narrow this list down in my head, I had it not really super close to being in the top 10, maybe like 15-ish, but I revisited it and it's still really good. Even has like a full-on like 8-minute piano song at the end of it, and I wish I had put it over here, but I have the drum head that the song Bloom was recorded with.
Oh, nice.
Kind of on that tour we got to talk to the guys and stuff, and they decided to give us that drum head, which I'm extremely grateful for. Yeah. AJ, what is your number 7?
We went from indie alternative to British hip hop, and now we're going to vegan punk rock with Rise Against Endgame.
Oh, wow.
Ew.
Yeah, like Rise Against is one of those bands that somehow hasn't shown up on any of my top 10s, but I don't think there's an album of theirs I dislike.
Interesting.
So, they end up in like the latter half of all the year top 10s, so they don't usually end up in the decade top 10s. But no, they're solid. And this album in particular is really great with like Help Is On Way, Make It Stop, Satellite, This Is Letting Go. Like there's some really awesome tunes on here. And I saw them live around this album like multiple times. So maybe that's also why it kind of jumps out to me, is I got because they're fantastic live. So yeah, Rise Against.
They're a great like playlist band for me. Like I like to stick, one of their songs on a random playlist I'm making. Never got into them as much as an album artist, but I do enjoy their albums and obviously see what the appeal of that is.
Yeah, they're
Kylan,
one of those that I was really into Siren Song of the Counterculture, and then I kind of like forgot about them. So I'm excited.
That's how I would describe like Manchester Orchestra. I like their first 2 EPs in their album, and they did nothing wrong. Like
right.
it's not they dislike them. It's
exactly.
just like, I don't know. Like there's just so many bands that like they just got deleted from my brain for a while, and then they came back on somehow, and I was like, oh yeah, I liked that. Why did I stop listening to that?
Right.
So I can relate to that.
And I think 2011 is when Spotify launched in the US. So I think that probably screwed with everybody's preferences and, things like that, because there was so much at the fingertips to explore.
Yep.
Kylan, what's your number 7?
My number 7 is Bon Iver by Bon Iver. This is a record that I don't want to love, because I don't love the first Bon Iver record. I don't love, really, I would say like 90% of the output of Justin Vernon. It kind of bugs me a little bit. But this is one of those albums that I don't know. I was in, you know what? It really does tie into the introduction of Spotify, because I remember being on a flight, and right before I got on the flight, I, kind of downloaded this record, and it was like early in the morning, and the first notes of Perth came on, and I was like, oh, this is amazing.
Beautiful song.
And so I find myself going back to this record a lot. To me, it's a kind of perfect background record. I can put it on. It's like my version of like lo-fi beats to chill and study to, or whatever, Yeah. So I'm not the biggest Bon Iver fan, but I love this record.
It was my first one out. It was my number 11.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. All right, Josh, what's your number 6?
All right, number 6 was a comeback record for a band that I thought was just going to be a one-hit wonder, and that's Burlap to Cashmere. They're self-titled.
Oh, nice.
I really enjoy their 1998 album. It's one of my all-time favorites, and it was just such a shock to the system to hear that in even around Christian music. I think at the Double Warts that played a live show and just blew everybody away. And there's just so many different sounds that I hadn't heard before that I've since heard, but this comeback album in particular has got a couple of songs. I think one of them is like a dead ringer for Paul Simon or a Simon and Garfunkel. Love Reclaims the Atmosphere. That's a song that could very easily be a Simon and Garfunkel song. The harmony is just beautiful. Build a Wall and Closer to the Edge are also great, but I think it's one of those albums that's really strong for 6 or 7 songs and then falls off a little bit in the middle there, but really, really strong return from them. So I was really happy to get some more music from them after not thinking there would be anything else from them ever again.
Nice.
Yeah, that was in the 18 albums that I was originally considering for the list, but I think like you, it's a little inconsistent overall, I think, but the good songs are really good. Yep. My number 6 is one that has already been mentioned, and that's Broken Voice by My Epic. Josh, cool. I told you we had some we might overlap on. Just really good lyrics, incredibly well-written lyrics, and just kind of stripped down, somewhat acoustic songs. Just some quality chill music, like Josh was saying. It's good before bed music, and just one that I still go back to pretty often.
Nice.
AJ, what's your number 6?
Continuing in the sort of punk rock realm a bit, it's Bayside's Killing Time. Bayside is a band that, again, somehow is not like shown up much in our conversations. They just missed out on the like 2000s discussion. But yes, Killing Time with 666, Already Gone, and Mona Lisa. Anthony Ranieri can write a pretty solid breakup album and seems to write a lot of them, which bad for his personal life, great for his art, I guess. But yeah, solid album.
Really good live band. I was real impressed with them live.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. I've seen them I think something like 7 or 8 times live.
Oh wow. Yeah. They're so like, good that I hadn't heard any of their albums before seeing them live. And after seeing them live, I went and listened to the albums. I'm like, doesn't have the same energy that it did in a room full of people shouting the lyrics along, as is to be expected, of no fault to the bands. But
they're just some of those bands that just don't translate as well on record as they do live.
Yeah. Bleachers is one of those for me. Fantastic live. Not a huge fan of their.
Oh, yeah. We could have a whole separate conversation on my thoughts on Bleachers.
I didn't mean to cut down your AJ. I feel like both of your last 2 picks, I've had something negative to say after your.
I know picks. Eric is just coming in here being like, "Yeah, that's good," but
I didn't mean it as I didn't mean it as a negative. I was giving my own experience. So, sorry, AJ, if I crapped on something you love. That wasn't my intent.
Well, I'm going to say something negative about the next album that I list. So.
Yeah, come on, Eric. That's my job. I'm the negative guy.
My bad. Kylan, what's your number 6?
Okay, my number 6 is The King is Dead by the Decemberists. You guys know from our 2000s list, the Decemberists were a really big band for me. And this was another one that was like a slow burn. Because they pulled a lot of like country, Americana influences. And when this came out at that time, I was like, no, thank you. I don't want this. I want more like weird British nonsense from Colin Malloy. I don't want this Americana. But it, like, over time, it felt like to me a lot of the songs were just kind of undeniably bops. So this was another one. I have very specific memories of driving around Dallas, blasting this. It's a big summer record for me. Part of that, I think, is the artwork, and then the vibe of the songs. Just, it feels like you need to be a little bit hot to listen to these songs, and I'm always here for it.
I actually just bought that CD for 50 cents this past weekend.
Oh, wow.
And
have you listened to it?
With it being I haven't, but with it being so hot now, I'm going to put that on.
Yeah, it's a good tomorrow. Like hot driving record. This obviously is very specifically from my experience, but to me it feels like a good hot day driving record.
It's one of the 3 guesses that I had that would be on your list, Kylan. So I'm happy to see that.
Oh wow!
Actually, 2, because I did think the Bon Iver album would be on yours.
Well, I'm okay. Well, I need you to tell me when the other ones occur. I'm just so curious. I'm so curious what other people think of my taste in music, because I don't even know what it is.
Oh, okay.
I will say though, later on in my list, there is a band that I have brought up before on this show. Just teaser for everybody.
Okay. Josh, what's your number 5?
All right, my number 5 is another. I'm a sucker for guy-girl harmonies and acoustic sonics, so I'm a big fan of the Civil Wars. We only got 2 albums from them, barely.
Right.
But Barton
Hollow.
Hollow has got some really great songs.
Mm-hmm.
Poison and Wine, the title track, Barton Hollow. The Violet Hour is probably one of the songs that I played the most since I started tracking that with Last FM. Just a beautiful instrumental song. If you ever need one of those for a playlist. Other songs I enjoy are 20 Years and I've Got This Friend, but they just have a tremendous way of blending their voices and kind of dancing in and out of one another. Just I'd never heard a blend like that before. So
yeah,
we have our first overlap, Josh. Only mine's
look at that,
a little higher. Well, so there you go. Yeah,
nice.
Awesome album,
Cool,
fantastic band.
Okay, I'm
Love
just
it.
so excited because I've been pushing to cover that record on Church Hymns Now, and the other 2 guys have like zero. Like that album has nothing. Like it just completely passed by them. They're like, I don't know, like why would we cover this? So I'm glad that I now have evidence of a previous guest and a potential future guest talking about this record, so then I can go to them and be like, all right, guys, we have to talk about this record because it's really
Well,
good.
you just replace Josh with Josh and then TJ with AJ. Like this is fine. We just stage a coup. We take over Church Jam.
Oh my god, that would be really funny if an episode with the 2 of y'all, but just didn't acknowledge it. It was just TJ was switched with AJ and Josh was switched with Josh. That's so funny.
That would be hilarious.
I love it. I'd do
it. My number 5. So 2 of the bands on this list I found because of my obsession with All the Day Holiday. I don't know if y'all remember the Noise Trade website, but
oh yeah,
I would search for bands that I liked to see, and bands who mentioned them as an influence would come up. So I searched All the Day Holiday, and Canopy Climbers, which was my number 8, came up. And my number 5 artist, which is Weaver at the Loom, Before Now Was Then, is the album.
Wow.
And I just wore the thing out that year. It's only 8 tracks. Every single song is solid. It's one of those I just felt like I was always in the mood for. It's just kind of atmospheric indie rock.
Nice.
Not as upbeat as a lot of All the Day Holiday songs, but you can definitely hear like the influence in the guitar style and things like that. So yeah, that's my number 5. AJ.
Nice.
So we were just talking about bands that sound better live than they do in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
This band is the opposite, and I've seen them several times live now, and that is Angels and Airwaves, Love Part 2. Angels and Airwaves is really great for the most part on albums. When Tom DeLonge took a step back a little bit and let Yane Rubin push the musical direction, they got a little weird. But they're a great studio band that I've seen 3 times live, and all 3 times I've been disappointed by.
Yep. Yeah,
I'm about to go see Blink-182 here in a couple of weeks, so I get to see like, okay, is it just like a Tom DeLonge's not great live thing? Or what? But yeah, you were saying, Kylan?
Oh no, I saw Angels and Airwaves live once, and it was really disappointing. It's one of the few shows that I left like halfway through. I was like, yeah, I get it.
I think I'm usually not a huge venue person, but the best that I saw them was when they played a massive stadium. Like it was them and Weezer, I think, on tour, and that was probably the best sounding they were. So I don't know if their sound just doesn't work well in like the 1,500 to 2,500 person venues I've seen them in. The other 2, well, one instance, the other instance was at Warped Tour, and like Warped Tour in Arizona. I don't know if I can judge any band fairly because like 120 degrees on like black asphalt in the middle of summer in Arizona. Like I don't know. I've seen so many bands there that like, is it that they were bad, or was it because it was exhausting out and burning? Or was it that I already was like suffering heat stroke? I don't know.
Right.
But anyway, so yeah, Angels Airwaves Love Part 2. Particularly I like Surrender and Saturday Love off of this.
Nice.
Eric, you
I
have
was
something to add
listening-
now? Is this terrible?
Yeah.
Do I still throw it in the
Well,
trash?
Yeah,
actually,
this is
actually,
where Eric
Kylan already
says,
did
yeah,
that for
that's
me
it.
this time. But I was gonna say I was listening back to our last episode today at work, and I guess I must have been concentrating on something else because I feel like I totally missed it when Kylan said that Angels and Airwaves was Hillsong if they believed in aliens.
I forgot about that too. Yeah.
I
That
laughed
cracked
out
me up,
loud when he
yes.
said when I was listening to that. But
Yeah, I've made the
I'll-
comparison before as well that they've definitely got like a little bit of a worship band vibe
Mhm.
to them, but they're a little bit more focused. Their songs are like 5 minutes long, not 8 minute songs
Right.
for the most part.
I don't think I've heard that whole album, but I liked their first one, the one with the adventure on it. The adventure, I think, is just a great song. And every time I accidentally like open like Apple Music or iTunes or whatever it is on my phone, it plays that song because I guess it's first alphabetically of all the songs I've ever downloaded off iTunes. So I get reminded of that one every once in a while.
That is Tom DeLonge's best song, and that's not my opinion. That is Mark Hoppus's words. That the adventure
Oh,
is
wow.
Tom DeLonge's best song that he's ever done. So,
I'd agree with that actually.
Nice.
so yeah,
But I'm not a huge Blink-182 guy.
yeah, it'll be interesting seeing them live.
Yeah, they're coming
Anyway.
here too, but I don't know if I'll go.
Yeah, I'm going
all
out to Arizona for that. Say Anything, and then another one for a lesser known band. Like I'm going out for like a week and a half and seeing 3 shows, which is more than I've seen
Oh, nice.
in the
Wow.
past like 6 months.
Wow.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, that's funny because the one time that I saw Angels and Airwaves, Say Anything opened for them.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Anyway, Kylan, what's your number
Interesting.
5, man?
My number 5. Okay. We're getting into some real hipster territory right here. My Head is an Animal by Of Monsters and Men. If you were a barista or a bartender anywhere in 2011, you heard this entire record like every single day. And this was like one of those records that like I got a little tired of because like, you know, you had Little Talks and Dirty Paws were just played constantly, but you know, the second half of this record, you know, 6 Weeks, Love Love Love, and Yellow Light are all bangers too. It's a really, really, really solid indie folk pop record.
Just missed my cut. Like this came in, I think, at number 11.
Oh yeah,
So
I need to go
album.
back and listen to it again because I like that album.
it's good.
those
They
two bigger
also
songs specifically.
like they kind of suffered from that like Mumford and Sons thing of just being just so oversaturated that everyone
Yeah.
just kind of got sick of it. But when you take the album just on its own, and especially now being so far removed from all of that, like it's still just really good.
I didn't love Little Talks, so I never listened to the whole album. But
Mhm.
that's one that David Martin, whose list I gave last week, I think he's pretty big on them. So multiple people now making me think I should
It's good.
give
Yeah,
them a
yeah.
better try.
You should listen to it. It's in that same vein, you know, the Mumford and Sons, Passenger, even a little bit of like Dawes, like that whole kind of like early 2010s, like Lumineers, right? Like stomp clap,
Well,
folk kind of stuff. But it's good. It's good songwriting.
Rend Collective from CCM Twitter. Rend Collective. It's your
Yeah,
it's
there
your
you go.
comp.
There you
um, Josh, what's your number 4?
All right, I'm 100% positive this album is going to show up on someone else's list, at least one other person's. But my number 4 is Falling Up, Your Sparkling Death.
go. Oh
I'm not
yeah.
going to say it ton about it because I know there are others who have much more intelligent things to say about it. But I'm kind of the weird Falling Up fan that my favorite album is Midnight on Earthship, just because it sounds warmer to me, and I like that sound from them. But it really is hard to say what their best album is. That one, Midnight on Earthship, is my favorite, but this one, or their self-titled, might be their best. I think you could do a toss-up a lot of days, but Diamonds is a great song, Circadian is a great song, handful of others, but I just like how vocally it ebbs and flows with the music. It's all just a blast of volume, and I like it.
Yeah.
It's one that had to grow on me more than self-titled
Right.
and Midnight.
I have a guess that it's going to be a number one on someone's list. I'm not going to say who.
Yeah, AJ. Yeah, we'll get there. Let's do so my number 4, I'm gonna take I'm gonna steal one of Kylan's go-to criticisms, is that it's just too long. Otherwise, like it would be in the same kind of like tier of my top 3, and that's Hurry Up We're Dreaming by M83.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, double album, a lot of just, 1.5 minute instrumentals and things stuck in there, where I wish they would have just taken the best 11 songs and made it a single album. And I was having trouble deciding between this and then the Weaver at the Loom album, because the Weaver at the Loom album is too short with only 8 songs, and Hurry Up We're Dreaming is too long with 23 songs.
Split the
but
difference.
I ended up, yeah, but I ended up giving M83 the edge, because I do think if you took the best 10 or 11 songs on here, that it would probably be slightly preferred to the Weaver at the Loom album.
Nice.
Your criticism
Midnight
is why
City
I got bumped
on
down
that
mine. Yeah, like this would have
Really?
been this was originally in my top 10 and then got bumped out because I was like on a re-list and I was like, it's too much. Because Midnight City that you were getting ready to say, I have a distinctly fun memory of one of my best friends and I, like, having not seen each other in like months. Another friend was coming to pick us up, and like we were like dancing in the street, listening to that on my phone just because we were excited to see each other. And so I have like an emotional attachment to Midnight City.
Yeah.
But it's a good album, and I think I cut you off when you were saying something about Midnight
No, you're
City.
good. No, I was just gonna mention that that's probably the song from it that pretty much everybody would be familiar with. So what was your number 4, AJ?
So it's one that's already been mentioned, but just Civil War's Barton Hollow. And Josh said good stuff about it, and I chimed in a little bit. As a Pumpkins fan, I'll also point out the Disarm cover is fantastic. It is a really great cover, almost like Pumpkins' version of like Landslide, to where they made it their own in a really great way. And so that, and I don't think you mentioned Tell Mama when you talked about it, Josh. That's another great song that's on there. But yes, such a fantastic record. One of 2 country records going to be appearing in my top 10, which has got to be a bit shocking. Because low key, I do like quite a bit of like authentic country, is what I would call it. But yes, already talked a bit about it. But yeah, Barton Hollows, Civil Wars.
All right, Kylan, what about you? What's your number 4?
Mine number 4. Okay, I feel like narratively, I just love this that AJ brought up, specifically covers, because my number 4 is Birdie, the self-titled album by Birdie. She was like a British singer-songwriter.
Yeah, like folksy British songwriter.
Yeah, and she came out with a self-titled album in 2011 that's all covers. But it's like she does a cover of Skinny Love by Bon Iver, 1901 by Phoenix, The District Sleeps Alone Tonight by Postal Service, White Winter Hymnal, Terrible Love by The National, Fire and Rain by James Taylor, and it's all just covers, but they are all uniquely her. Like she puts a really good spin on every single song, and it's a total like 2011 hipster coffee shop vibe album.
It's a good album to have in
it's-
the background while you're working.
Yes,
She has such a pretty
exactly.
voice. Like she takes all of those songs that are already really great off
Yeah,
the early pieces
and
like
they're all
pretties
songs
them
that
up.
like, you know, most people would probably like recognize, but you know, she does her own spin on it, and that's an album I keep finding myself like going back to. So good. And her cover of Terrible Love by The National is incredible. I've gone down a huge rabbit hole of National covers, and there are not very many good ones because they're one of those bands that are just so kind of specifically their own thing. Like it's hard to put your own spin on any of their songs, but her version of Terrible Love, I think, is incredible.
Blanking on it, but Barty Strange has a really good cover of a National song, and I'm
Yes,
blanking on
that is
what
also on
song
my
that
list.
is right now.
I have a very limited Spotify playlist of good National covers.
Mr. November. Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, it's fantastic.
Mhm.
Yes. But yes, the Birdie album is excellent. It's a coffee shop background
Yep.
music, and she
How do
does
you
a
spell
great job.
that?
Birdy. Birdie.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
it's
see.
good. It's good. You should check it out.
Cool. Josh, what's your number 3?
Ooh, getting into the top 3, everybody.
Yeah,
Trucking along.
I'm upset, guys. I have to tell you, I'm upset because somebody mentioned Pulse a minute ago, and that but the Nothing Is Wrong record should be on my list, and it's not. So I'm very annoyed with myself. I just need to get that out there. I've already messed up. Anyway, my number 3 is Need to Breathe's The Reckoning. Just Southern rock. They put on a tremendously awesome live show.
Yep, they do.
As far as this record goes, I think the first 8 to 10 songs are like unimpeachable, just perfect. Their sound, them owning it. There's barn burners on there, good slow songs, great lyrics. Then they had a couple of songs that I think are filler to keep it from being a star record, but those first 10 songs, 5 stars in my book. Still a great record, and one that I come back to a lot, and probably my second favorite. There's like The Outsiders, just a little bit better, but wrong Southern rock, bit of gothic rock. There.
Very cool. My cousin Angie's favorite band. Shout out to Angie.
All right, Angie.
My number 3 is, I guess you say it, No Devolution by Thursday. Thursday is a band that I was like a pretty casual fan of until this one came out, and then they did this whole. It almost feels to me like a post-hardcore version of Disintegration by The Cure, which people probably know who listen to this that is one of my favorite albums of all time. It's just like very layered and beautiful, and it's some of the best songs. One of my favorite songs in my top 100 of all time is Turnpike Divides. No Answers was my first favorite from it. It's one of those that's kind of revealed a different favorite song for different eras of my life, and one that I find interesting no matter how many times I've listened to it. And it's in my top 50 of all time, I think.
Oh, wow.
As of last update.
That's wild. Yeah, I have to listen to this record because Thursday, they're one of those bands that, you know, we've all kind of talked about this a little bit. Like those first couple records, I was like so into, and then I just kind of forgot about them. Yeah,
This
But-
album is not anything like those first couple, so don't.
No,
as long
I'm
as
here
you go
for it,
into
though.
it knowing that,
Yeah. I'm here
Yeah.
for it. I love when bands like change.
yeah,
So
yeah. All right, AJ, what's your number 3?
So my number 3 is Brian Fallon's side project from Gaslight Anthem, which I don't think is a huge surprise considering my well-known love of Gaslight Anthem, The Horrible Crows. So their album Elsie is a really awesome album. It's him, it's their guitar tech, and then I think also the guitarist from Gaslight Anthem might have been on this as well. And Gaslight covers several of these songs when they play, and Brian Fallon
cool.
does when he does solo. But like Behold the Hurricane, Sugar, Lady Killer, and Crush kind of jump out to me as awesome tracks on there. It's I don't know if more mellow version of Gaslight is the right words to use, but it obviously sounds like Gaslight, but there's a little bit less edge to it, a little prettier, but not
sweet.
quite like the folk country that his solo albums go to. But yeah, don't think it's a shock considering my well-documented love of Brian Fallon.
I've been aware of that band since forever, but I feel like I don't think I've ever taken the time to actually listen to a full album. So that's another one that I'm going to have to check out. Kylan, what's your number 3?
Okay, my number 3. I have a question for everybody. I'm just curious if anyone else is familiar with this record, because if you're not, I'm going to say, as opposed to the architecture in Helsinki and the unicorns, like, I think this is a record everyone should listen to. Do you guys know the band Honey Honey?
No, don't know that one.
Okay, it's all one word, Honey Honey. In 2011, they came out with an album called Billy Jack. And this is one of my favorite records of all time. It's like, it's really similar to like Shovels and Rope, like that kind of like female-led Americana, roots, bluesy kind of music. But they have a song specifically on this record, Turn That Finger Around, is my favorite song of theirs, and it's weirdly one of the least listened to songs on the record. And then the last track, Thin Line, reminds me a little bit of like White Stripes and very Shovels and Rope. But this is an album, I have no idea how I found this album. You know, it's like one of those that just like kind of showed up one day. And it just absolutely blew my mind when I first heard it. But her voice is incredible. Really simple kind of roots Americana music. So everyone should check that out. Turn That Finger Around. I want that to be the most streamed song on the record because it's their best song, hands down. So
I go
listen to that one
to always
just for you.
I appreciate it. It's good. It's so good. They ended up doing so Greg Garcia, the guy that created My Name is Earl, he had a show after My Name is Earl and after With Hope, or whatever that show is, called The Guest Book, about a hotel, and they ended up doing basically the score and the soundtrack for that entire show, and every episode ended with them doing like a cover, and so that's probably their biggest quote unquote claim to fame. So they do a lot of good covers for that, but this album, Billy Jack, go listen to it. It's so good.
The Raising Hope, the TV show that you're thinking?
Raising Hope. Thank you. Thank you.
I watched
It's a
that.
Kylan record too, but it's like 11 tracks in 39 minutes.
No, I know. It's
kinda
perfect.
like your
It's perfect. It's a perfect amount of time.
I watched the last show that you mentioned, and I never caught that was the same band at the
Oh,
end of
yeah.
every episode. So like that shows you how much attention I paid.
Right. No. Well,
Fortunately,
you know what? Let's say that it speaks to the versatility of that band.
better way.
Yeah,
I feel less
they-
bad now.
they've got a real like almost kind of like bar band vibe, right? Like they can kind of do like a bunch of things, but this album in particular felt like them like being really specific about what they wanted to put out, and it shows. It's great, and it deserves a lot more love than it has, I think.
Yeah, I always go to rate your music because I have like a network of like 30 people I follow on here who it feels like there's almost no album untouched between the 30 of them, but none
Right.
of my mutuals have rated this album.
Wow,
So
that's
and
wild. Okay.
I rarely come across one that none of my
Oh man.
follows have
Okay, I
rated.
might have to just after this make it my number one. Just it like of all of my top 10, I think this is the album that the most people would connect with if they found it. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
So,
I'm looking forward to it. It's tagged with mellow, female vocalist, melancholic, and melodic. So
Yeah.
sounds like
it's good.
the kind of thing I'd enjoy.
Right.
All right, Josh, what is your number 2?
Speaking of records that are not probably for Kylan because of how long they are, I love the sheer audacity of this one. Josh Garrel's Love and War in the Sea in Between. It's over an hour long. I think it's like an hour and 6 minutes long, 18 tracks. But the combination of guy with guitar, some hip hop stylings, he's got one of those either love it or hate it voices because he's very acrobatic with how he sings. But I just love this album as a whole. I really don't like to listen to it outside of maybe the songs Resistance and Farther Along. Just for the songs themselves, I want to listen to it all in one piece. So I don't listen to it a lot, but usually when I do listen to it, I'm listening to the whole thing.
Right.
It's woven together by some cool instrumentals, and they just kind of lead into the next song, so it feels like a whole experience. So it's one that I have on vinyl, which is a very small vinyl collection, but I think it's worthy of the format. So great album.
My experience with that. Go ahead, Colin.
No. You go ahead.
I was gonna say my experience with this album was I played it and I loved White Owl so much that I was disappointed that the album went literally everywhere else throughout the rest of the album. It's a very diverse album.
If it hooks you with that song, you're going to be disappointed because it's like it doesn't really revisit.
Right. Yeah. For me, it's one of those albums. I don't have it on vinyl, but it's one of those that I feel like I need to get on vinyl because, like, when I listen to a record, like an actual record on vinyl, you know, it's the whole thing of like going to Starbucks versus making your coffee at home, right? Like if you're going to listen to vinyl, like you want to be involved in the whole process and you want it to be worth it. And that's for sure like one of those records that like I want to engage with it fully in that way.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense.
For sure.
Okay, my number 2. So I've started a new scoring system for rating albums, and I'm gonna be working through getting a whole top 100 list of that. I don't know if it'll be something separate from my like favorites of all time list, or if it will just be the new method of me finding that. But I rate each song on like on the Pitchfork scale. I say like 0.0 to 10.0, which gives room for more differentiation between albums that I love by having a bigger scale to rate them with. And as of right now, and I don't see it changing because I've already done this with like the higher albums on my favorite albums. But my number 2 and number 1 of 2011 are my number 2 and number 1 of the all-time scoring method. So
Wow.
that's why 2011 is such a huge year for me. This is actually 3 bands that All the Day Holiday led me to. They were buddies with these guys, and that's how I heard of them. Waves by Moving Mountains.
There it is.
It's
Nice.
it's a little bit post-hardcore, a little bit emo, a little bit post-rock. Has some cello in there. Gets real pretty at times, and just kind of has a little bit of all the things that I love in music. A lot of my favorite genres. I mean, it's pretty much the complete package for me. Not a fan favorite. I think they were originally more of a post-rock band before this album, and then they had Matt Goldman work with them on this one, and I think their influences were more like Under Oath and Thrice than the post-rock bands who had influenced their previous albums. So not one of the most beloved by the fan base, but it definitely is my favorite. Have any of you guys heard that album?
I have.
Thoughts?
It's good.
Okay.
I've never heard it, so
I'm not as articulate about my thoughts as you are, but I enjoyed it a lot.
Okay.
They're one of those bands that, yeah, it's also for me, and I know that like this can sound condescending, but I really don't mean it that way. Like, they're a really good background band.
Yeah.
Like, you know, for me as someone with ADHD, I'm always looking for something that can like be interesting enough, but also like chill enough for me to like turn off that part of my brain that's just thinking about everything. And that album in particular for me is one that I'll often put on when I'm like mowing the lawn or cleaning the kitchen. Because it satisfies a lot of those itches for me without having to like engage fully, if that makes sense.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll take it. All right. AJ, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is a second appearance from an Arizona band and my second country album, and that is Roger Klein and the Peacemakers, Unida Cantina. I'm going to assume, like all the other times I've mentioned Roger Klein, that y'all never heard this.
No.
That's right. Nope. That's all right. It's good Southwest authentic country. I particularly think people might like Heaven on a Paper Plate, De Niro, Small World, and Paper Airplanes. But yes, good, solid, red dirt Southwest country. I will continue to mention Roger Klein until you all are like, yes, we finally know who that is.
Yeah, I added it to my playlist, but I haven't listened to it yet, unfortunately.
Same. One day. If Eric stops coming to me with like having to make lists of all my favorite albums, then I'll finally get to it and I'll listen to it. So, in conclusion, it's all Eric's fault why I haven't listened to this record.
Sorry, AJ. It's also my fault that I haven't listened to that record. So, Kylan, what's your number 2?
Okay, my number 2. All right, get ready, everybody. I brought up this band on my favorite albums of the 2000s list. But this is a record that I think is a little more accessible. I put Moment Bends by the band Architecture in Helsinki I know in that episode I brought up like they started In Case We Die with like a weird opera thing. This record was them kind of finding their pop lane. A lot more like straightforward songwriting, a lot more straightforward pop production. It's still like a little weird, but I defy anybody to listen to the song Contact High and not think it's a bop. It's just like fun, dancey, but still in keeping with like their kind of weird thing that they're trying to do. So, if anyone listened to that episode and listened to In Case We Die by Architecture in Helsinki and were like, nope, this band is not for me, maybe give Moment Bends a listen. You might like it.
Very cool. Before we do number ones, I looked at like singles that were released in 2011, and two of the worst songs of all time released in 2011, and one of the greatest songs of all time. The two worst of all time, in my opinion, "Country Girl, Shake It For Me" by Luke Bryan came out in 2011. Just makes me want to just punch everything.
It's rough.
And "Moves Like Jagger" by Maroon 5 also came out in 2011, which makes me want to yank my ears off. But the great song that came out in 2011 is "Friday" by Rebecca Black.
Yeah. Hey, there you go.
Josh is shaking his head no.
I love Friday. Okay, so this is really funny because we're actually recording this the day that we just released a Church Jams Now episode on "Cruel to Be Young" by Joan Zeta. And we had Aaron Sprinkle, who produced the album, come on the show. It was like a total surprise. It was really fun. And I gave him the example of like how Tooth and Nail failed Joan Zeta by signing them thinking that they were Rebecca Black, when in reality they were Bruce Springsteen. And I got the dubious honor of having Aaron Sprinkle say, yeah, I guess that analogy makes sense. Sure, I guess that works. I wouldn't say that, but I guess that works. And I was like, I'll take that as a win, because I got to talk. I guess, however briefly, I got to talk about Rebecca Black with Aaron Sprinkle, which is the weirdest sentence I maybe have said in my entire life.
That's amazing.
Hashtag winning.
Yeah.
All right, let's do the number ones. Josh, what is your number one of 2011?
All right.
My number one of 2011 is my second favorite band of all time, and that is Switchfoot's Vice Versa. Most days I would say this is a 5-star album, and then other days I'd say it's 4.5 stars. But top to bottom, some of their best songwriting. Love the drum sound on this one. Afterlife is a great opener. Of course, the great fast song Later. It's got two of their more iconic, Where I Belong, which their album makes their concert closer for many, many years, if not still. The big album for me that year. It's one that I keep coming back to. Probably my second favorite album by them. To the Beautiful.
Nice.
I've been waiting for that one to show up with you. So, like, by process of elimination, I got your number one right. Because I was like, you still haven't mentioned this. Based off of everything else I've seen, this has got to be mentioned. So,
there
I guess you're number one right. Technically.
You got it.
AJ is getting really good at predicting everybody else's list.
I know. That
I haven't even gotten into that tonight, but I have Eric's that I thought it would be. And so I need to go back and listen to this later and be like, all right, what's my score?
I feel like that's got to be like its own segment of like AJ's side bets.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nice. No surprise. My number one is my favorite album of all time, Your Sparkling Death Cometh by
Hey,
Falling
there
Up.
you go.
There it is.
If you know who I am and you haven't listened to this album, I'm just going to assume you're not going to, because I don't know how many more ways and times I can try
It's
to convince people to listen to it. But
Yeah. No, Eric,
yeah.
I think that album was like when we became like actual friends. Was
Huh.
on Twitter, you kept talking about Falling Up, and I was like, I don't know anything about this band. What should I listen to? And you talked about that album, and the way you talked about it was like, oh, okay, I think this is definitely worth a listen. And I listened to it, and it was so freaking good. And I was like,
Good.
okay, I want to be friends with this guy.
Love to hear that. I love to hear that. I don't think you ever told me that you listened to the whole thing. I remember you telling me that you had listened to at least like Circadian.
Oh yeah, I had
First
started, but yeah, no, I listened to that whole record, and then that was like all I listened to that week.
Oh, nice. Love
Yeah,
that.
dude.
Way you talk about them, yeah, I went and listened to like their whole discography after you.
Oh,
like
okay.
what at one time, either you talked about it or you said something on Twitter, and I was like, okay, the way this guy talks about this band,
Yeah, exactly,
They gotta be
exactly.
great.
It was like
So-
you had grown like a level of respectability, I think, with a certain audience on Twitter. So then when you started talking about it, everyone, or maybe not everyone, but people that respected your opinion were like, "Oh, okay, I should listen to this." And then we did, and now we're all best friends.
That's
Look at that.
AJ, have you listened to it, AJ? Oh, you said you listened to the whole discography.
Yeah, I
Did
listened
you
to everything
Have any
they-
particular thoughts on it that you
No,
remember?
there's all solid stuff. I mean,
Cool.
yeah, it's not necessarily my go-to sound and stuff, but it was all like one of those things. If I had known about them back in the day, it probably would have. It sounded like more like a lot of my friends would have listened to, and so by proxy, I would have listened to a lot of it.
Right.
But yeah, I think they have a pretty solid sound.
Very cool. And Colin, I just remembered, Josh Balogh is the reason that I found Church Jams Now. From I think.
Wait, look
yeah.
at that. Despite the jars of clay of it all,
Despite the jars of clay and sixpence on the red shirt where you
I know,
ripped them
hey.
new ones, stuck with you guys. I stuck with you guys. You got better.
I
I
appreciate
give
it.
you that.
Despite the fact that we mangle facts, Josh. Okay, literally, you made that one comment on Twitter, and that's become part of the Church Names Now lore. Like we actively now tell people that we mangle facts, and we've accepted it, and I just love that. And
Plus, that's why you brought Josh Olson in to give you some research.
no,
so that
we
you can
needed
have some
to
facts.
because we were a hot mess before him. But fun fact for you guys, we're actually planning on redoing our first episode on Jesus Freak for our 101st volume. And then I think we're going to redo Sixpence None the Richer because, you know, we've all grown, we've learned,
Nice.
and we're going to see
Nice.
how we feel about them now.
Okay, all right.
Because of you guys. Because
I want to
of
hear you
y'all.
all. I want to hear you all do
I have to
Divine
listen to you roast them
Discontent by
twice.
Sixpence.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good one too.
All right, AJ, what is your number one?
So my number one is my introduction to Frank Turner. So his England Keep My Bones album. I don't know if you guys heard that. He's an English singer. I put him on par with like kind of Brian Fallon-esque type person. So shocker that I like it.
Yeah.
But
I
I was
love it.
introduced to him by a now friend of mine on a beach in Croatia when I was brokenhearted after a breakup. He was like, I think I have tunes for you to hear. And it was Redemption off of this album, and then Substitute off of his a little bit earlier albums. But yes, England Keep My Bones. So yeah, Redemption, I Am Disappeared, I Still Believe, Begging Sing the Blues is like this, like as close to Americana that I think a British person could get. like very much like
Nice.
inspired by Bruce Springsteen and Tom Petty and all that good stuff. And yeah, he's friends with guys from Gaslight Anthem. He, so that kind of sound, folk driven guitar punk influence kind of tunes. It is an excellent album, and it opens with him doing actually an a cappella song, which is
Cool.
like a really strange way
Wow.
to do that, to open an album. But then yeah, it's great tunes, and like I said, it was my introduction to him, and in my top 50 from the 2000s, I think he's got all 3 of his albums during that time are in my top 50. Then he'll make appearances later on, but he is a thoughtful, songwriter that came out of the hardcore punk band Million Dead. And so it's one of those things of like, if you listen to Million Dead, you're like, you did that
and then
and this. Okay.
Nice.
Worth checking out though. Alan, what about you?
Cool.
Sweet. Okay, my number one. I want to play a game with everybody. Do any of y'all think you can guess what my number one album of 2011 would be?
Would be?
Yeah. What do you
Did
think?
the
Word
national
Magic? What
release
do
an album?
No. What do you think my number one album is?
I'm looking to see if
Okay,
the
I have a
national
guess.
released something in 2011.
Okay,
I have a
Josh.
guess.
Josh,
It's probably
what's
not.
your
It's
guess?
probably not gonna be right, but I have a guess.
Okay,
Touche Amore, Part in the Sea Between Brightness and Me.
that is a really good guess.
Why is
My-
it a good guess? Because it's 13 tracks, 20 minutes long.
And
it's got the
like
kind of style that I don't know.
screamy,
that
like
it-
white boy angst.
Yeah, it's-
Yeah.
it's odd. Yeah,
Yep.
I don't know.
Okay, that's a really good guess. Eric, AJ, what about y'all?
I think I've got 3, definitely 2 guesses here.
3.
First, Death Cab for Cuties, Codes and Keys.
Okay, that's a good guess. They're one of my favorite bands of all time.
The other one would be, and again, this seems out of left field, but seems perfect for you, is Joyce Manor's self-titled Joyce Manor album.
That's another really good guess.
I think that's where I'm gonna stop.
Okay, Eric.
All the
Eric-
bands I keep looking up didn't release anything in 2011.
Okay,
Hold on, Wild
Well-
Flag self-titled. Jerry
What's that?
Brownstein's Wild Flag self-titled. Jerry Brownstein
okay.
was like,
all very
Oh
good
my
guesses all around. Unfortunately, no one gets a point in that game because my number one album of 2011, one of my favorite records of all time, is Camp by Childish Gambino.
Really? Interesting.
No.
I have that in my top 20, and that's not a joke. Like, I am
Okay.
okay.
So, I have been a huge Childish Gambino fan from like day one. Like Cul-de-sac, the mixtape he released before this, was huge for me. Derek Comedy, like I basically like followed Donald Glover through everything he's ever done because I am his target demographic. Like hipster white dude of a certain age. Like I saw him on the I Am Donald tour where he did half stand up, half Childish Gambino songs. And I was like, I want to be this man. Can I figure out how to be this man? And Camp, one of the things about it that like blew my mind was it was released on Glassnote Records, which was the same record label that Mumford and Sons was on. And so for like a nerdy white guy that had just recently gotten into hip hop, like to have this sort of like super hipster hip hop thing like kind of coalesce in that album, it just blew my mind. Plus is like over the top, like very, very, very dirty blue sense of humor, especially at that time. Like I said, I was 21, and when I heard a lot of these songs, I was like, "You can say that? You should not be allowed to say that." And Ludwig Göransson's production was incredible, and he's gone on to do like so many incredible things since. But I thought it was really cool that he was the composer for a lot of the score of Community, and Community was my favorite show.
Great show.
And so then, to be able to like connect the dots of like, oh, well, they met on Community, and then he produced this album and did all of this. Like musically, I thought it did a bunch of really interesting things. Lyrically, I thought it did a bunch of interesting things as well. It's a weird, very personal album. It's very autobiographical. It's really gross in parts, but really personal in a way that I appreciated. Good record.
Yes, it is strange and interesting and well done. Like Bonfire and Heartbeat jumped out in particular as tracks I liked on there, and I think those are safe tracks for the audience on this show to maybe try.
Yeah.
On there, considering. But yes, his first couple albums are really great. And again, it wasn't necessarily a bad thing after that. It's just in the massive archive of music that is in the world fell by the wayside. But yeah.
Yep.
All right, I appreciate that.
I never heard the whole album. I just remember it being very divisive. Like
it was. Well, and so the whole thing of like, he talks about it. So on my honorable mentions, he had the EP just called EP that had like Freaks and Geeks on there, and he talks about a lot. He has a specific line of like being the only black kid at a Sufjan show, and he kind of towed this line between like, being nerdy but liking hip hop that made it feel like really accessible for people like me that felt like, oh, I shouldn't be allowed to listen to hip hop. It was a really good gateway, I think, for me. So,
well, I've got a lot of new music to listen to that new to me music anyways.
Yeah, there was no overlap this time, right? I love
just
that.
a little bit of overlap.
Me and Josh had 2 overlaps,
and then Josh and I had 1.
Right.
So, but I think it's like.
What was your number?
Okay.
Sorry, what was your number 2 again, Eric? That's the one that I wanted to check out.
Waves by Moving Mountains. If you like, I know you like Behold by My Epic. It's kind of the same kind of
nice
influences and vibe of that album, I think. So you might.
Okay,
you might
I'm giving myself a homework. I'm gonna listen to Kylan's Honey Honey album and AJ Roger Kleiner Peacemaker's album that he mentioned.
Yeah.
All right, we actually pretty much did it in about 90 minutes.
I know.
I know.
We hit a goal.
I know. We've been on track.
Right on.
Once.
Right on. Thank you all so much for coming on. Also wanted to mention, I think you might all probably be friends with Richard Goes by at MC Dragon on Twitter, X. He's doing a fundraiser. He works for World Vision, and he's doing a fundraiser right now to raise money to help fight impacts of climate change and restore forests and things like that. So nice. I'll put the link to that in the description, in the notes for the episode. If you're not following Richard on X, I recommend you do that.
Mhm.
He's our Kiwi
And-
correspondent, or MXPX expert. But yes, he works for World Vision, which is a great Christian charity out in New Zealand that does a lot of good in the world.
Yeah.
And he's also like my favorite Kiwi white rapper. So like there's that.
He's
I love that
a
shout-out.
hilarious guy. Yeah.
Good man.
All right. I think that's going to about do it for us. Thank you all for coming on. Follow Church Jams now. Follow AJS is writing. Is that right?
Yeah. By Jesus and Joe Strummer
Yeah.
on July 2nd.
Check out his Jesus and Joe Strummer. Josh Balogh, J Bay all the way on X. Also, your blog is it joshbalogh.wordpress.com?
Yep, joshbalogh.wordpress.com, where you can find any music reviews that I write in the Christian realm on Jesus Freak Hideout.
Nice. All right. Thank you guys for coming on. And thanks everybody for tuning in.
Have a
Bye.
great
Thanks for
night,
having me.
gentlemen.
It was fun.
Yeah.